Or does anyone have specific questions? Jim Rondell in the house from Novo Fogo.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jim.
You can tell by all the people wearing the Cachaca shirts.
Right?
But Luke, he's not.
Luke's not, but he's also with us.
I'm wearing my Cachaca pants, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
Let's start drinking before you tell us too much about it.
Yeah, maybe we'll just get started because we can always catch up. And,
yeah, so.
1 minute.
Oh, Allison,
Okay, we're pausing.
Aye. We'll do that. We'll hold up this entire train just for Allison.
Actually, I'll be right back.
Hi, Bettina.
Hey, you gotta watch us eat, so don't mind us.
Yeah. What are you eating?
Roasted chicken from Boca. I am so excited. I'm not gonna lie.
That's what we're having tomorrow.
Can I see it? I want to see what it looks like.
Yeah, it looked really good.
Yeah, you can see it.
Ooh.
Yeah, I destroyed the display. I'll post on Instagram. Super excited.
You shake your company nose?
What?
You shake your company nose?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, so we were waiting for someone.
Yeah, I think we're waiting for Allison, so we'll
Okay.
I'm expecting a
I'm gonna eat the cheese out of this.
Jim, how'd your food delivery go?
Really good. I just finished about a half hour ago.
Nice.
I
Cool.
delivered 46 orders of jerk chicken
Holy shit.
Yeah,
around town.
that's awesome. Jim's located in Seattle, Washington.
Yep.
In Seattle. I wasn't sure if it was Seattle or not, but. So he's been making meals for hospitality workers who have been furloughed. So he did jerk chicken today. He's done a traditional Brazilian dish called feijoada. Delicious. Had it for the first time in Brazil on my Novo Fogo distillery trip. It was great. Okay.
All right. Let's get started.
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to briefly go over what cachaça is as a category, because I think there's a lot of people who aren't familiar with it or have heard of a caipirinha, but maybe haven't heard of cachaça and vice versa. So cachaça is usually referred to Brazilian rum. However, it is a little bit different from like Caribbean rum that you typically know about. Because it's distilled from raw sugarcane juice as opposed to molasses, which is a byproduct of sugar production. So it's going to have a really kind of cleaner, well, not necessarily cleaner, kind of funkier flavor profile, but kind of similar to like how like tequila has that really like vegetal note. I think people don't understand that cane is like a plant that grows from the ground, and I think that kind of bringing people back to that concept helps people sort of wrap their mind around the flavor profile that they're tasting, because it's not kind of sweeter like how Caribbean white rum would be. It does have sort of grassy notes. It has some like earthier kind of plantain notes as well. And I wanted some of the Novo Fogo team to kind of go over sort of like what Novo Fogo is doing as a company that kind of sets us apart from other brands. We have a really kind of strong wellness program that we do, and then I kind of mentioned some of the hospitality support that we're offering right now while people are furloughed. Jim, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I sure can. So as a company, one of the biggest aspects about who we are derives from the fact that we're down right adjacent to the Atlantic rainforest in the far south of Brazil. And there's less than 10% of the landmass of the Atlantic rainforest left. And that's really bad. And so being next to that, it's all protected land. And the mantra of our company is to take care of that land as best as possible. So as a company, our distillery is 100% certified organic. We're a zero waste distillery, meaning which is really the biggest important certification for us is that we're zero waste. We produce nothing that we don't consume on site. We just started or about a year and a half ago, started our own reforestation project in Brazil for the reforestation of endangered Brazilian trees. That's taking off and is now going to spread into 3 states within Brazil. And then just last year, we announced we're a carbon negative company. And so we do carbon offsets for everything we do as a company. Everything we ship, every time we fly, everything we do is we buy offsets for that. And then by the fact that we are giving trees back to the earth, we're a carbon negative company. To our knowledge, we're the first spirits company to ever announce that we're a carbon negative company. As far as what we're doing right now, aside from kind of local efforts and delivering meals to people, our COO, Gabby, has been doing twice a week yoga and meditation classes by Zoom. We provide those, Luke, or what are they, every Tuesday and Thursday?
Yeah, Tuesdays, I think 11 Central, and then Thursdays, 3 o'clock Central.
Yeah. And those have been fun. We can certainly link that to y'all if you want to check that out.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about?
That's it, unless people want to go into like the production of how cachaça is made, which we can certainly talk about. But we can also just field questions as we go as well. Feel free to always shout out questions if you want.
Yeah.
Just interrupt you as much as possible.
Let's start with a drink so that we can get drinks in hand, and then we can continue the conversation. I did want to do a quick lime demo because I actually learned how to cut these limes last year in Minnesota when I was doing a caipirinha pop-up at an account with Dragos, and he was like, no, you're doing it wrong. Like, this is the best way. So I want to do it the right way for you guys. So there's also a tutorial online and on their website, which I can send you guys a link to as well. But the most important part of the lime is the juice, obviously. Lime peels have a lot of pith to it, so you kind of want to get rid of the pith. So I'm going to cut the ends off so that we're getting rid of any of that unnecessary bitterness, because we obviously don't want to impart that into the cocktail. You're going to see, there's like the white kind of line, that little vein in the middle. So you also want to remove that, because that's going to also give you that like gnarly bitterness that you don't want. That way you can also use less sugar for those who are a little bit more health conscious. So we're going to get rid of that. I'm going to use a whole lime for my demonstration, just because I do like it to be a little bit more citrusy. So then once you get rid of the little vein in the middle, you're going to score it horizontally. So make sure you don't cut all the way through, because you want to keep the whole piece together. And then you're going to also do it again, but diagonally. So you're going to make sort of like this little accordion out of it.
I can't see your cutting tool, but can you move the camera down a little bit more?
She has a screen next to her where you can see
Oh,
her hands. Can you see that? So that's her.
okay.
Feel free to hit
I can do it again too, but essentially this is what you want your lime to kind of look like. So let me do this again real quick. So you're going to cut it horizontally, just score it. And then you're going to do it diagonally. See guys? Ooh, there we go. So as you muddle it, you're actually going to be extracting more of that juice. You don't have to muddle it for as long, which if you over muddle limes, it'll get, again, like really sort of bitter. So I was going to use our cute little Novo Fogo jar. We offer our silver cachaça in cocktail kits, caipirinha kits that come with 2 little jars, this awesome muddler, and then a full bottle of cachaça. So what's great about this is you can muddle like directly into the jar, and then once you shake it, you can actually just use it as a drinking vessel. You don't have to dirty another glass, or if you're on the go, you don't have to use like a disposable cup, because again, we want to be as sustainable as possible. I'm going to put 2 full kind of heaping bar spoons of sugar in here. And again, for those that weren't here in the beginning, I use regular granulated sugar, but then I use my mortar and pestle to kind of grind it down a little bit more and make it a little bit more fine so that it starts to melt down easier. So then just muddle those together.
Chiyo, can you talk to me about muddling? Is there like a better way to do it? Should I smash it with my muddler? How should I do that?
So I typically rest it on top and then I do like a twisting motion, because again, you don't really want to like extract too much of the pith. I don't know. How do you muddle? That's how
Oh,
I
that's
muddle.
perfect. That was perfect. I just think I think some people just smash, and you're doing it so beautifully. I wanted you to explain to them how you're doing it, and like the pressing of the oils versus just pulverizing that bad. But yours is stunning. I just wanted you to tell everyone why.
It's all about that wrist, girl. Okay, I also forgot that I wanted to add a little bit of mango in there. Let's like get crazy. I had some frozen mangoes in my freezer, so I'm gonna also incorporate a little bit of that. It's kind of mushy, so I don't really have to like muddle it too much. And then I'm gonna add 2 ounces of the Novo Fogo silver cachaça. So something really special about our cachaça, again, that I don't think Jim mentioned, but all of our sugar cane is grown at the distillery. Everything's hand harvested. It's 100% organic certified. And once it's harvested, it goes right into the fermentation. It gets juiced and then goes into the fermentation process. So everything's really fresh. You do everything like right away. We don't want to let things kind of sit around. And then once it's distilled by our amazing female-led distilling team, we let it rest for an entire year before we bottle it. So it really has time to kind of like produce a lot of more of those esters. You'll notice if you have a bottle of Novo Fogo, if you smell it, it's very aromatic. And it doesn't just smell like straight up alcohol. You get lots of notes of like the terroir from, having the cane grown in the Atlantic rainforest. There's a lot of fruits and flowers on the property that a lot of those yeast strains kind of get incorporated during the fermentation process. So it's a really, really pretty cachaça, in my opinion. I'm gonna add ice. And then all you gotta do is shake this bad boy up. And then you've got your caipirinha. Yum. I'm actually not drinking alcohol right now, you guys, so I can't even indulge. So while we're enjoying this, do you want to go over a little bit of the production, Jim?
Wait, sorry, how many limes were in there?
I used 1 whole lime, but I halved it.
Okay. Is this muddled? Does that look remotely correct?
Oh, wait, I can't see your, let me see. I got a gallery view. So are there limes in there?
Yes, there are limes in there, and there's also a bunch of blueberries.
Ooh, yum.
Mush.
Yeah, so that should be muddled.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I need to go to remedial class.
Oh yeah, no worries. I didn't have you on gallery view, so I couldn't see what you were showing me.
No, that's fair.
And then how much of the cachaça did you say to add?
I did 2 ounces.
2 ounces.
So
Mhm.
Do you want me to show pretty pictures? I have visual aids if we want.
Yeah, if you can you share your screen?
Am I have permission to do that? Let's see. Looks like I do. Me.
Ooh, chicken.
Chicken. All right, visual aids. So this is our distillery. It's quaint. It's out in a very rural area. We're about 45 minutes away from a large city called Curitiba, which has like 3 to 4 million people. And then we're just sort of like 5 to 10 minutes away from our little town of Mojeches, which I don't know Luke, how many people live in Mojeches? I don't know where Luke is. Not very many. It's a small town. This is our distillery, like I said. So one of the fun things about our distillery, the aspect that makes it zero waste. So if you look over to the left side of the building, under this canopy, this is where we crush the cane. So we cut the cane down and it comes up here. We crush it up here, but it's gravity fed into the fermentation tanks, which are in this room. Gravity's free and it outputs no energy. And so it's one of those things. So we built the distillery into the hill with that in mind. And then it's gravity fed into the distillation room, which is right here. Here's our still, which I'll go a little bit more about that. I'll have another slide that shows the still. So it starts off, everything, we call ourselves farmers first, because everything starts off with us growing sugarcane. This is our field before just as we start. You can see the cane fields in the background. So basically, sugarcane itself is a giant blade of grass. So if you cut it down, it just regrows. It's a great crop. It's wonderful for growing. That lasts really up until almost 5 years before you have to really dig up and replant. We replant usually every 3 years in a field, depending on how the sugar is maturing as it grows. And you cut it down once a year. So every year it grows back to full maturity, and you cut it down again. And then every like 3 years or so, we dig up the field and do it again. These big plastic sheets we lay down, this is to keep the weeds at bay. So we just have these rows of cane, and we try to like kind of inhibit anything else growing in between those. They still get out because that's the life of organic farming. We try to displace it as much as possible without obviously using pesticides. Here's cane. This is probably like maybe a couple months in. Cane grows to about 12 feet tall, and about half of that happens in the last month of maturity. And so this is just as it's growing. We harvest between May and September. That's the winter in Brazil because of the southern hemisphere. We flip-flop. And so this is probably like, this is in the beginning of probably spring, this cane, what it looks like. We fertilize the fields with natural fertilizer, which is to say chicken manure. We actually mix the lees from the distillation, the leftover dregs from distillation. We mix that with chicken fertilizer, chicken manure. We actually trade some of that for the chicken manure and then mix them together to form fertilizer for our fields. Here we are, the cane's growing. This is probably 4 months in, maybe 5 months in. This is probably closer to that. And here we are ready to harvest. This is how tall it gets. We harvest everything by hand. When you harvest by hand, you can get a little bit more control over the stalks of cane that you have. It eliminates the exposure to the elements. So when you cut cane down, and this is one of the aspects of working with a fresh cane spirit. The moment you expose the end to the oxygen in the air, life forms want to eat that and turn it into booze. So you really you quickly have to press it and start fermentation. Otherwise, you won't be able to control that fermentation. It'll want to turn into booze immediately. And so everything we cut down will always be pressed within 24 hours. Here's more. This is a field that got overgrown a little bit by plants, and that's just sort of what happens. That's the fun. That's fun for them. Here's a cane field. So basically, this is what it looks like. We cut it down. We leave a lot of the leaves and things in the field, so they'll naturally break down. We put it on our little cart there and hoist it up to the distillery where we press it. This is our press. It's an electric press. We have a battery array that we store energy in because the power goes out a lot because we're in the jungle. The battery was basically there to power the press. Probably later this year, we're going to install solar panels to our roof. It'll further take us off that grid because those solar panels will probably power our distillery. Probably like 80% of our distillery's power needs will be just from those solar panels. We only press once. You simply just press, it goes in. These turbines essentially like press the cane and the juice comes out, and we're left is the cane waste coming out the other side. I don't personally see the harm in pressing more than once. A lot of distilleries will kind of crush it into more of a pulp, except that requires a lot more machinery. And machinery obviously outputs more energy and byproducts. We use all this bagasse, which is the leftover cane waste, that goes in to fuel the boiler. So all of the cane waste we use is basically goes in the boiler, and the boiler creates steam, and that's what powers the still. Here's our fermentation tanks. These up here, you can see up the stairs, that's where the juice is collected, and we start the fermentation process, then it goes into the fermentation tanks here. These dimples on the side of the tank, they're temperature control bands. So one of the fun aspects of distilling in an open air environment in the tropics is that if your fermentation tanks get too high in temperature, they just start to develop acids that translate into distillation that don't taste good. And so we have these temperature control bands that keep the temperature down so they don't develop that. Here's our fermentation tank. We ferment for 24 hours. In 24 hours, it goes up to about between 7 and 8% alcohol. We call this the sugarcane wine. We call it wine in Brazil, probably partially for tradition, but it actually fits a little bit more than anything else. It's one of the only products within the spirit world, aside from brandy, where you are fermenting and distilling a raw product. Almost everything else we ferment and distill in the booze world is cooked to release the sugars. But fruit and sugarcane they have sugar that gets extracted in the juice all on their own. In this essence, really what we are doing is, for the most part, making an eau de vie of sugarcane. And then the fun part, it gets distilled. So here's on the right here, this is our copper pot still. It's a 1,200 liter still. Every batch of 1,200 liters of liquid will yield 120 liters or so of hearts. We only distill once. And it comes off the still. The hearts come off the still on average around 48 to 50% alcohol. It's not super high, but if we distilled it another time, we lose the flavors that we were like to get out of it. Another aspect of saving energy here. So you notice here's the still, and you have the arm of the still, where's the cooling arm. This is where the spirit's collected. It goes back into the preheater. So this device is where we start the batch. It helps heat up the batch to a temperature that makes it easier to distill. And the energy that this gives off while it's cooling helps heat up the next batch. We've actually measured it, and it saves on the energy costs of heating this batch by 20%. And that, in a gist, is how we make it. And then it goes, and here's another just shot of the side to show you how big those stills are. So this is not as much of a frame of reference. Two of our distilling team there doing the distillation. Our distilling team is a team of 4 women. Our master distiller, Agenor, what he does mostly is teach, and he oversees a lot of the aging process. But all of the 4 women who work for him were all like proteges. They all either studied under him at the university where he taught cachaça, or they started off at the distillery working on other means and worked their way up to being distillers. Here's the large steel fermentation or resting tanks. So each of these is a 35,000 liter steel tank. This is where you rest the silver cachaça for a year. Like Chiyo said, that just kind of calms it down. Whatever you distill from a raw product, and you're really only distilling, like I said, we're only distilling to 50% alcohol. There's a lot of other stuff in there. And so it needs just a little bit of time to calm down. You see that a lot in the agave world as well. They rest in glass for many years, a lot of the mezcals. Also, realistically, every batch is slightly different. We can't say that we create the most consistent product because sometimes we stop production, have to cultivate a new yeast. We cultivate yeast from our own sugarcane fields. And so if we stop production completely because of like rains will come in, force us to not produce for a few days, we lose that continuous fermentation methods and we have to restart. And realistically, that produces a different batch of cachaça. And that's just life. And so this helps homogenize that into the flavor we want. And then our aged products go into rick houses. We have one rick house that's underneath the fermentation room. It's very small. That's where we put the barrels that we age for a little bit longer. The other ones are mostly open aging right next to our distillation room. They're up on high shelves just on the side of a warehouse area. And that's where most of our chameleon and barrel aged expressions get aged. And that in a gist is how we make cachaça.
Yay. So I had the opportunity to go to Brazil a couple of years ago and visit the distillery and blend, kind of make my own blends of the different cachaças that were being aged in there. And not only are they using ex-bourbon barrels, but Agenor does a lot of experimental barrels as well, with some indigenous barrels, and also I think there was some Armagnac barrels and cognac barrels and wine barrels. So I don't know. I just love it that they're so like curious, and they take risks, and they experiment and do fun things. For our next cocktail, I'm going to do a plan and old-fashioned, and it's using the barrel-aged cachaça, which is aged in ex-bourbon barrels. They source their bourbon barrels from Heaven Hill Distillery or Four Roses, but they do have a series of indigenous wood-aged cachaças that are really cool. And actually, I'll probably have Jim talk about that as we're sipping on the old-fashioned. So let's get the old-fashioned going. This is one of my favorite cocktails.
How's everyone's caipirinha so far? I mean, like, I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, how's everyone enjoying the caipirinha? And what kind of fruit did you guys all use?
My blackberry caipirinha was delicious, and I drank it way too quickly.
That happens.
The mango caipirinha is pretty good.
Oh, hey, you did the lazy caipirinha. So we actually, okay, shameless plug. We have our RTD ready to drink. Actually, where should I put these? Right here. The RTD ready to drink canned caipirinhas. So if you don't have fresh limes at home, or you don't wanna muddle and do all the work, you can also just buy these at the store, and they're amazing because they're using our organic cachaça. We started with the original lime, and then we expanded the lime to mango and passion fruit as well, and they're very delicious.
Fun anecdotes about cachaça and the caipirinha. So a lot of people don't know, cachaça is the 5th most consumed spirit in the world. There's actually more cachaça made in the world than rum. And to our knowledge, the caipirinha is the most consumed cocktail in the entire world.
I can see.
Yeah.
And you know,
In reality, that also, so the caipirinha is truly the drink of the people. There's no wrong way to make it. You can't screw it up. If you make it too sweet, you add more lime. If you make it too tart, you add more sugar. You can't mess it up. There's no wrong way to make it.
And you know, I gotta say, like, the Novo Fogo, like when I opened it, the first thing I was struck by was the smell, right? I mean, like, I've got like a shitty bottle of Ethioca.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, which, like, you open it up and it smells like gasoline, and you're like, well, you know what, I have to mix it with limes and with sugar in order to do it. And I was like, I was kind of struck, like, when I opened the bottle, I was like, holy shit, it smells just like it was like a little nostalgic, because like my dad would used to cut off pieces of sugar cane, like we'd like chew on it.
Yeah.
It smells just like fresh sugar cane. So I was like, oh,
What it should smell like.
yeah, really enjoying it.
Douglas, did you use any fruit at all, or did you just make a traditional OG caipirinha?
I'm a classicist, so I went straight. Like, also, I hate fruit. So there's that.
Anyone else use any fun fruit? Amy, what did you use? Is Amy still on? I think she bounced off. What about Alex? Is Alex still on?
We use strawberry.
Strawberries, yum! I love strawberry caipirinhas. Those are one of my favorites, and I think that it actually pairs really nicely with the Novo Fogo Silver because it has such like a creamy texture.
Before we move on to the next cocktail, I wanted to say one thing. So every time we do this, we're featuring pros, and they're really like generously donating their time and expertise to us. So one thing we try to like to do is, give them like a little tip, because tipping your bartender is the right thing to do if you are drinking, unless you want to get kicked out of a bar. At this time, I just wanted Chiyo to say her Venmo handle, and it's optional, but like, again, I just really appreciate the fact that these pros.
Yeah, my Venmo is at Chiyo Talk, which I can like write it down somewhere. Or is there the chat?
There's no
option?
Sorry. Like.
Okay. It's CHIYOTAK. And I'm gonna actually be splitting my tips today with my friend Anthony, who works for me in Minnesota, because he's obviously been furloughed since all of this happened as well. So I want to spread the love. But yeah, no, thanks for joining us. I think that the most important thing is that we all get to come together virtually and spend some time and also learn something new and enjoy a cocktail while we're at it. So, okay, let's do the old-fashioned.
Do it.
I'm going to build it basically how I was taught how to make an old-fashioned, and I know there's different ways to do it. Since we muddled the caipirinha, I actually don't muddle my old-fashioned like the fruit in the old-fashions. So I do bitters. So I'm using, actually, these are from Seattle too. Scrappy's aromatic bitters.
Nice.
I'm gonna do a few drops of that. These tiny little bottles. I'm gonna do kind of a lot of drops. And then I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use this pineapple gum syrup that I had, but you can also make your own pineapple syrup by using pineapple juice and demerara sugar, or even just regular refined sugar. You know, making just a compound simple syrup, really easy, equal parts pineapple juice to sugar. But since I have this,
Also, the folks here what gum syrup is, I think it's pretty unknown to most.
Sorry?
You want to talk about what gum syrup is? I think a lot of home bartenders might have never seen it before.
So it's that I think was used more so during like the Prohibition era, and it's I believe a material that was actually sourced from the gum tree, right?
Yeah, Arabic gum. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, just the sweetening agent that they use to create sugar with, but again, like, and it's a little bit thicker in texture than normal simple syrup, so it does give you a lot more body, a lot more sweetness. So if you're gonna do your own pineapple syrup at home, I would suggest using demerara sugar or like sugar in the raw, because it's gonna give you more of a thick texture.
You should not make your own. You should support Jen Koyo by ordering Small Hands Food syrups on Amazon.
Or that.
Also, like,
So I'm
when you're like buying like crystallized gum sap, like, what are you doing? Like, man.
I'm going to do a 1/4 ounce to a 1/2 ounce of the pineapple syrup. Really, it depends on how sweet you like your cocktails. So I typically do 1/4 ounce. And then I'm going to add 2 ounces of the barrel-aged cachaça. And this cachaça has been aged for 2 years in the ex-bourbon barrels. So what's really nice about this is you still get that really nice kind of plantain note, but it's a little bit more rounded out, and you also get some natural sweetness just from the barrel aging process when it's extracting a lot of those wood sugars from the barrel. And it has really nice, you know, bourbon characteristics like that vanilla and baking spice note that you get from bourbons typically. And add ice. This cocktail is going to be stirred. I'll stir this up.
Quick question. What are the last 4 digits of your phone number? Venmo is asking.
9102.
Thank you.
Yeah. Think for a second. I don't call myself that often. So once it's stirred, you can kind of taste as you go. Everyone's ice is going to be a little bit different. And then you can strain it into your cocktail glass. And then I'm just going to reheat this ice, but you can throw some ice. I like to do mine on the rocks. And then you can, I'm not going to garnish it. I usually will garnish it with like some pineapple fronds or something like that. But I don't have any pineapple here. So I'm just going to have it like this. Was anyone able to get the barrel-aged expression of the Novo Fogo cachaça? I know some people are kind of having a hard time finding it. I know, Doug, you couldn't find it.
Yeah, no love here, sadly.
Binny's we went to had 3 different kinds, but I actually just was looking at, I saw 3 bottles next to each other, but I only bought this one, so I can't really tell you.
No worries. Yeah, so I think Binny's, it depends on what location because they're not the same, but I think if you go to the Novo Fogo website, there's a link that you can press that will list out the different states and where you can find it in retail. So, or retail and on premise, I believe. So check that out if you're interested in trying the Brazilian old-fashioned. I like it better than regular old-fashioned just because it does have that like underlying sort of fruit character to it from the cachaça. Jim, do you want to talk about our 2 wood series?
I sure do. So the primary, what we do at Novo Fogo is age in oak. For us, American oak is sustainable and prevalent and easy to come by, and it also tastes good. There's a reason why every spirit you ever have in the world is aged in oak. It's not only is it easy to age in because the wood itself is porous and expands and retracts and doesn't leak, but like it tastes good. However, there's a history in Brazil of aging in native Brazilian woods, which really dates back to when you stored cachaça. You just made a vat out of whatever trees you had out back, and you put your cachaça in it. And this lends itself to be a completely different flavor profile. We have to preface this and talk about how all trees are endangered, or all trees are protected. And a lot of the native trees that are used for aging cachaça traditionally are endangered species. So you cannot cut down these trees. It's illegal to do so, and the illegal wood trade within Brazil is rampant. So everything we do is going to always start off in oak. Every bottle that we put on the shelf is going to start off its aging process in oak. We think it's not only the future of cachaça, but it's also the backbone of what we do. But then we do some aging in Brazilian woods. We have very few of these barrels because we have to make sure through every means that these barrels are either barrels that we reclaimed ourselves or barrels that have a trail going back to something that was illegally harvested. And so we don't have very many of these. We have we have 3 different 2-wood expressions. One is the tanager. The tanager is aged first in American oak and then Araribá, which is Brazilian zebra wood. It's slightly opaque and very red in color. And just 6 months in that wood gives it this like deep red color. That cachaça is tropical. It starts off with big tropical fruit notes, but then finishes extremely dry. There's so much resin in that wood that translates to cachaça that it's very tannic. It'll almost like suck the moisture from your tongue the way a big, deep red wine will. Chiyo's bringing some bottles. Yeah, see the color of that. It starts off as a pale yellow from the American oak for just 1 year, and then turns into this deep, dark red after just 6 months in that wood. We leave that. What's that?
What's the name of that wood again?
Tanager.
Zebra wood.
Start with the year in the steel and then put it in oak, or do you put it right
So only the silver is rested in steel. Everything else goes straight into the barrel because it can rest and age at the same time. It can kind of homogenize its flavors, but also extract oak and age. So it's just the silver that rests in the steel. So yeah, the tanager is 1 year in American oak and then 6 months in Araribá. The next one that Chiyo has there is called the colibri. Colibri. Tanagers, we like naming things after the rainforest. So tanager is just the name of a bird. It's a pretty little bird we also have them in Washington, but they're native in Brazil. Colibri is hummingbird in Portuguese. So the colibri spends its life in oak and then amburana, which is Brazilian teak. So this jumped back and forth between oak, and we had 2 of these amburana barrels. We had 2 of the Araribá barrels, but now 1 broke. We only have 1 left. We had 2 of the amburana barrels. They were different sizes. We actually gave 1 to a beer company to age beer in after this.
Way Beer, right?
Way Beer, yep.
Oh, I love that brewery. So good.
They're great. I love those.
They did I brought back a tropical goza that they made. It was
fun.
fire. Yeah.
We're doing some like really fun stuff in the beer world down there. Way
Mhm.
Beer's ready to, and our master distiller Ajinor just loves beer. He's probably off starting a brewery right now. We don't really know what he does. He's all over the place. So the colibri, it jumped back and forth. So we put it in oak, and then we put it in Amburana, and then we're like, oh, too much of that. Put it back in oak for a bit. All right, we'll put it in here. Oh, no, take it back. Put it in this. Too much Amburana. Amburana's really strong. It's just loaded with cinnamon and baking spices. If you just take off the top and smell it, it just smells like holiday Christmas in a glass.
Mhm.
It's just so much flavor from that wood that comes through. We also have an expression called Graciosa. I don't know if that's available in.
Just came back. It's available in Chicago for sure.
Chicago, yeah.
Minnesota, no. Wisconsin, I'm not sure yet.
We have it in California, Nevada, and New York. But not very many markets have the Graciosa. It ages in 2 years in American oak and then 18 months in Castaneda, which is Brazil nut wood. And this one's a lot more delicate. You almost get a slight oiliness that comes through from the wood on that. And has some like slight like snickerdoodle notes, but it's far more delicate and subtle. It's one of my favorites because it's just like a spirit like no other. 10% of all of our sales to the two wood cachaças go back into our reforestation nonprofit in Brazil, because the whole goal is to somehow take these trees off of the endangered species list.
Well, so you guys have been doing a reforestation project too. Like, I think you guys have planted over 600 indigenous trees. You guys were getting rid of a lot of like invasive species that were in the area. So yeah, I mean, Novo Fogo is doing some really great work out there. Not only making good cachaça, but also, making sure that the environment is taken care of and that the economy is taken care of as well there.
We also sell these wonderful shirts that you can see are very popular. All 100% of the sale of these shirts goes into our reforestation project as well.
Yes. Cool. Well, I think we overloaded you guys with a ton of information today, but I hope you guys learned a little bit more about cachaça. You feel more comfortable with the category, knowing a little bit more about it and the history and the production and everything, all of the love that goes into it. Hopefully you feel a new appreciation for the spirit.
Yo, Chiyo, thanks so much. That was a really good time. I hope everyone's drinks were good. I am personally on my third one, so I think it's quite good.
Nice. Also, hey, Leah, I just saw you.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about, so next week, Leah, you can wave again. Leah's going to be walking us through the world of Sazerac, which is a person who's the Saz super fucking good.
Yeah, one of for that, you don't have to get any specific type of rye either. I'm just gonna let you know right now. I know that we'll put out little details, but no pressure on that. But having a good solid rye whiskey is a good idea.
Yep, yeah, you'll do rye. You'll probably need a little bit of absinthe or something similar to that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll get the full list. I'm gonna use my little spray bottle because I'm cheating, but necessary for everyone.
You're conserving.
And then the week after that, we've had Amy Verasco here before. When she taught the Japanese highball. She's awesome, super cool. And she will be walking us through the world of. I mean, a lot of folks have texted me and they're like, "Hey, what do I do with I've heard you can put eggs in cocktails. I can put protein in cocktails. Oh my god!" So we'll be walking through the world of and sours as well. So that's going to be super exciting. So a lot of cool stuff coming up.
Sazeracs are my favorite drink.
Yay!
You have something to look forward to. Yeah.
Frothy cocktails.
So,
well, thanks everyone for joining. I hope you guys had fun. I had a lot of fun. This is the highlight of my week. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chiyo. And once again, her Venmo is Chiyo Tech, at Chiyo Tech. You can manage it through the button.
Thanks, guys.